John. I'll be the host for our meeting this morning. Good morning, and glad that those of you who are online, whether you're joining us through Facebook or YouTube or GoToWebinar, glad that you're here, and welcome to the students who are here in Southern Oregon joining me for this class as well. If you're new here, our format on Sundays is that in a moment, Guy will join us and he will present a talk that will last about 60 minutes on the topic that you see below. And then when he's through, we'll share a couple of announcements about upcoming events in our weekly schedule. And then we move to part 2 of the class, which is an open discussion with Guy, in which those of you online can send in written comments and questions, and I'll relay them to Guy and he'll answer them. Those of you on GoToWebinar, you can talk directly to Guy just by clicking the hand icon and joining in. And students in the room, a reminder that you can come back here to the office during our discussion and you can talk directly to Guy as well if you wish. And so our entire session lasts up until about 11 o'clock, about an hour and a half. And we hope you can stay for the whole thing. And if not, this is being recorded, so you can return to it and listen to it, watch it again in our archives. So I think with that, we are ready to get started. So we'll invite Guy to join us here and say good morning. Good morning, Guy. Good to see you.
Good morning, John. Thank you.
Yeah, so would you like me to read the topic and key lesson?
Yes, please.
All right. Our topic this morning, everyone, is start seeing your life in a bigger and better light. And here is our first key lesson for the day. Calling on anxious thoughts to check the rising tide of some fearful feeling is like trying to stop a landslide by throwing rocks at it. All right, Guy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, John. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us from wherever you are, whatever part of the world, whatever day or time, live or catching the archive version. It is our intention on every Saturday and Sunday to help illuminate corners of our own mind that have yet to been opened up and yet to see what is sitting down in those corners that once revealed can completely change a person's life, which is again why we have these meetings and the purpose of our particular topic today. So I think without further notes, we'll get into it. For those of you that were able to join me yesterday on Insight Timer, we talked about some specific signs of a small mind that we as individuals collectively might be suffering from. So I hope that you were able to take that material in. And if you weren't, it's not going to matter too much, but it will help you enhance the understanding gained yesterday, what we're going to look at now. In essence, we said that one of the signatures of a small mind is how easily it blows passing moments out of proportion, the old proverbial mountain out of a molehill. And all of this happens quite mechanically. This mind largely asleep to what it is doing to itself and within itself most of the time, if not all. Something catches its attention. Could be something someone says, could be something on the news, driving by, could be anything. And in that moment, by a process of comparison, that mind in a dream compares what it has dreamt about, what it hopes will happen, how it sees itself, to what actually is taking place. So it instantaneously sees what it sees as being a dark cloud of some kind on the horizon. Surely you know moments like this. And in that instant, our whole inner sky, the whole screen of our mind, our consciousness turns dark and it's stormy, as if somehow or other the heavens didn't get the notice how things were supposed to go. And now everything and everyone is offended by the fact that things aren't working out the way we imagined. Simple explanation. But we also know, if we've studied ourselves at all, if we've had any true interior epiphany, that just as the open sky, I'm sitting here in Florida looking at a beautiful sky, just as the open sky is never disturbed by any particular cloud. And here in Florida, one of the really beautiful things about it is this never-ending cloudscape, this endless passage of the accumulation of humidity off of the oceans, bringing together these extraordinary clouds so that every shape, size, color one can imagine, and sometimes all in a given day, passes through these skies. And when it passes through the sky has no reaction to the clouds that move through it. It remains what it is, and that is a kind of backdrop by which the motion, shape, and size of these clouds is detected. And without that sky, that open sky that doesn't change when the clouds move through it, one wouldn't even know that these clouds were in the shape and form that they are. The point being with this metaphor is that unlike the sky that allows all of this to move through it, you and I, identify with this, what we would call a storm-making mind. Something that is forever attending to some shape, some size, some movement of a thought, of what we interpret the meaning of an event to be. And in that instant, we lose sight of this broader, greater truth that everything's changing, but nothing is changing. And that happens in those moments as it does. And we identify with what we see the shape, size, and color of that cloud to be. What does that thought mean? How do I know what a thought means? How do you know what any thought means unless something in the mind producing those thoughts then tells us the meaning of that thought? That's how I know what a thought means. The thinking mind tells me. And when that happens and it says, this is what's happened, now I suffer because now I have to do something about what shouldn't have happened according to the mind that's compared the event to what its expectations are. In essence, we suffer. Imagine for a moment that you're outside with somebody, and as you're sitting there with them, they're looking up and they're going, oh, whoa, and then, oh, no, and oh, whoa, wait, oh, how no. And what they're doing is every particular cloud that their mind attends to is producing in them these reactions, and they're taking the reaction as being the reality of who and what they are in that moment. So they're filled with resistance or attraction to every single cloud that moves through the sky. That is a fairly good metaphor, an analogy of what's going on all the time with us. Because what we suffer over in any unwanted moment isn't the event. What we suffer over is our own negative reaction to it. We suffer from our reaction that fills us with the appropriate anxiety or dread determined by what our mind is telling us that moment, that cloud means. And yet we rarely see this. And one reason we don't see it is because mechanically, habitually, the moment that our mind fashions onto something and sees it as a problem, that same mind, the source of the reaction that we are suffering in and from, the experience of the reaction, we are not suffering from the moment. We're suffering from the reaction to the moment that tells us, as it does, that there is someone or something outside of us to be blamed for the darkness we feel cast by that cloud and its shadow. This is a very important thing to understand. And it is why, if you're able to see it, that no matter how many things we believe we change when we react to an unwanted moment, change places, plans, partners, change it, no matter where we go, we run into the same condition, only under other circumstances. And that's because this consciousness, this reaction-making machine, this cloud-making machine, never stops doing the only thing it knows to do with these moments. But because we don't know that's all this mind knows to do, is to identify with an experience that it, by and large, creates for itself in that reaction, and then in the reality it says is the nature of that reaction and the experience behind it. But the question is if you can see this at all, and I don't have time to stop and ask. If I see that my mind makes mountains out of molehills, and that more often than not, I regret what comes out of my mouth, let alone what takes me over or torments others because of the pain I'm in. Why in the name of God would we do something like that to ourselves? If what I've said is true, and I assure you it is, not that you can believe in my words, but that you might for yourself see if your experience validates that. That's all that matters. We keep hurting ourselves or others, and we respond to the moment based on what our reaction is telling us the moment means and what's being done, failing to see that everything we're suffering from in that moment does not exist apart from something in us that is busy attending to what it always attends to in unwanted moments, which is to A, describe the disturbance, B, define it as best thought can do in that blink of an eye, and then allow that reaction to tell us what we must do to restore what we think is the lost peace we had the moment before. Here's a story to illustrate this, a short story. Two friends, they like to walk together every other Wednesday. And the one friend knows this, we'll call him Mark, and the other guy's name is Bill. And Bill knows that Mark has a favorite walking stick. And then one day, he's not walking with the walking stick. And another week goes by, still not. And finally, Mark says to Bill, look, I'm not saying you should have it, but I know that was your favorite walking stick. Where is it? What happened to it? And Bill looks at Stan and he says, well, I think you remember I told you we adopted that 6-month-old rescue puppy 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I said, I do remember that, and that's great, but I'm wondering, what has that got to do with your missing walking stick? And Bill looks at Stan and he says, well, quite a bit. He said, actually, it turns out that little girl, that little puppy doesn't care what she chews on. Stan says, you can't be saying what I think you're saying. Bill says, yep. She chewed it up. Now, simple story, but what is the interior meaning of that? How does our life, this relationship we have with the way in which we are constantly identified with negative reactions and the thoughts that dress them, what has that got to do with what we're looking at now? Just like a puppy, only without its natural innocence, a sleeping mind must always have something to chew on. A sleeping mind must always have something to chew on. Please see it in yourself. We're not judging ourselves. What is your mind chewing on when your eyes open? That mind needs a problem because it needs it to chew on in order to figure out some conclusion that will resolve the disturbance. It needs a grievance. It needs somebody that bothers it. A sleeping mind must have something to chew on. So it chews on what you did or didn't do, what you said or failed to say. And then as it chews on that, it starts chewing on a plan to make sure that you understand where it is that you have caused this pain. And that sleeping mind fails to see that the pain it experiences is because it's chewing on its own thoughts. It's chewing on itself, literally chewing on itself. And why is the sleeping mind chewing on its own thoughts? Because it's trying to digest those negative reactions. It's trying to digest everything that it says is responsible for the suffering it's going through in that moment. But try and see with me that when I'm busy chewing on a solution, I'm chewing on looking for a solution because there's some suffering going in the background. Why else would my mind be occupied with trying to reconcile some disturbance? I'm disturbed. And I believe that the me that is searching for the solution to that suffering is somehow or other completely different than the suffering it's searching to end. And it's not. This mind needs something to keep it busy, because this sense of self, this familiar sense of self, is a derivative of that unseen activity. And everything that false sense of self derives from that activity is as powerless, is as empty as of the power we need to save us from that pain as it is to see itself in action. So can you see this? This mind cannot see it's always chewing on itself. And so habitual is the feeling of sorting everything out, thinking ahead, getting this problem solved. Not practically, but this mind does not know the difference between what is practical and struggling to get out of a prison it created for itself. So habitual to us, we are attached to that cycle. This is why when you go to bed at night, you can't sleep. Your mind is still trying to solve a problem that it imagined into existence when a certain set of circumstances didn't align with what you had hoped would happen. So if you can see this at all, I wake up in the morning. Why is there anxiety when I open my eyes? Or why is there a dread? Why do I not want to get out of bed? Because I'm going to have to go back into what I didn't sort out yesterday. And so the question arises in these moments, if you're following me, I trust you are, what are we really chewing on as we struggle to control or otherwise change these events? What is it that we are actually chewing on? I've alluded to the fact that without knowing it, we are this sleeping mind is chewing on the content of itself. But now I want to look at this in a very deep fashion with you so that we can begin to discover something that is out of sight of 99.9% of humanity, and that is not an exaggeration. And until we can see it, we will be 99.9% of this human consciousness, which is forever imprisoning itself, believing that it can escape its own reactions by having another reaction that seems to point to a way to reconcile that pain. We say this pain, this suffering is born of that person, this circumstance. But here's what I want to ask you. I'm asking you to see it with me. How we experience these moments, what you did, what she said, what the news brought, is how we experience this moment where there is this disturbance, this suffering. Is it ever separate from our reaction to it? Is the moment I don't want, the moment that frightens me, is that moment separate from the reaction I've had to that moment? Or is the moment I'm experiencing inseparable from the sense of self that is derived from that reaction in the moment? If you really look at this with me, you understand it. Of course, the answer is no. The experience of this moment is, in fact, my reaction. It is the way I am interpreting, talking to myself, sorting out an experience produced by a reaction that tells me the way to sort out the unwanted experience is to change the condition blamed for it. So these things, the reaction and the event, they seem to be separate. This is a very important idea. My reaction to what you have said seems to prove to me that this nature reacting is other than what has caused it. But we have understood before, we've looked at it, studied it. Events and reactions rise together. There is no action without reaction, no reaction without action. They do not appear in sequence the way our mind says they do. They are not separate moments, but a single expression of a particular moment where what is the will of heaven meets the will of earth, however you want to put it. But we don't see it that way. We don't see that the reaction I'm having is my experience of the moment. The reaction says, you are the cause of the reaction. You are not the cause of the reaction. You are the instrument through which that reaction is revealed as being a substance, a part of this nature still asleep to itself. So event and reaction are two sides of the same unconscious nature. Event and reaction are two sides of the same unconscious nature. Let's go slow. I don't want you to get lost. I said event and reaction, two sides of the same. What is the event? Here's the event. I'm reacting to it. What is the event that I'm reacting to? It is my experience of the meaning that my mind is giving to that moment. So the event, for all intents and purposes, may be taking place seemingly outside of me. But whatever the nature of that event, the experience derived from it is because this mind, having the reaction, is telling me what that moment means, where it's going to go, what's going to happen to me, so that what I'm experiencing in the moment is not the event itself, but a nature that is sure that its reaction understands something's wrong, something needs to be done, and now it can get busy trying to figure everything out. So we do what? This is a critical juncture. I hope you're still with me. So what happens in these moments? If in fact what we see as being separate, here's the event, literally what my mind is telling me has happened, and my reaction to what my mind is telling me. So the mind, the sleeping mind, has and always comes up with an explanation telling me what just happened, and then the same mind reacts to its own interpretation. It interprets the moment, and then it reacts to its interpretation. But that mind believes that the event it's interpreting is actually outside of itself, and it's not. And unless we begin to see this in our lives to some way or another, then we keep trying to change one side. We keep trying to change one side. We keep trying to change the outside. And when we're trying to change the outside, we are completely ignoring the inside. So we attend to what our mind says, this is what happened, and ignore the reaction that essentially is creating our experience of it. What I'm getting to here, I knew would be difficult to speak about. The reason that nothing real changes in our life, meaning why we keep going through the same experience over and over again with different people, different places, yeah. The reason that nothing real changes in our life is because the nature trying to change the event is the nature that created the reaction to it in the first place. Here's the bottom line. It's not a key lesson, but it should be. The reason that we don't change is because it's impossible to change one side of ourselves at a time. That's why we don't change. That's why nothing changes. Because we're looking at the life around us as the cause of our experience of it. But truth says the life around us is not the cause of our experience, but rather our experience is in fact telling us what is causing it, and they are not separate, they are a singularity. You cannot change yourself one side at a time. I think I can change the pain I'm in by getting you to agree that you've made a problem out of this moment. I think I can change how anxious I am by believing that if I can move the moment to some place downstream where that won't be the way it was, then by changing the world outside of me and aligning it with my expectations, I won't be anxious about what may or may not happen. The unending, futile attempt to change the condition without understanding the unconscious nature responsible for the experience of it. And as long as I spend my life, and we do, looking out at the world around us and trying to change what we see as the disturbing factor, we will never be free, because the disturbing factor that our mind lays its eyes on and reacts to does not exist independently from the experience produced by that reaction. I'll say it to you in other ways. Our reactions tell us stories. And the stories seem to prove our experience of the moment is separate from the moment that we're reacting to. Surely you've seen this. Have you never not said to somebody, I wouldn't be negative if you weren't? It's inwardly explosive to realize that what we think appears as something separate and apart from us is in fact the experience produced by the part of us, one, telling us the meaning of that moment. And as it tells us the moment, what it means, then we feel torment because the meaning that we've told ourselves sets against whatever it is that we hoped the moment would be like. The sense of myself that is hurt and the condition that I see as hurtful is a single movement of an unconscious nature. And until I see it is a single movement of an unconscious nature, I will always be one side or the other of that unconscious nature, meaning I will always be identified with trying to change the condition or hating myself for being someone who can't escape the problem that I face. It's hard to see because this mind, our present sleeping mind, can only experience life in parts. We've seen some of this, even talked about it. When you see a moment that is breathtaking, you look out and you see literally a 35,000 foot towering thundercloud. So close you could touch it, so real you can feel the sentience of it as if it's a being. In those moments, there's no observer separate from the cloud, from the experience of the majesty of the movement. Nothing. It's just a singularity. That's what beauty is. The beast is when that mind no longer capable of experiencing the actual fact that there's no separation between the observer and the observed. That's the beast. The beast is produced by the illusion of separation. And the beast produces the illusion of separation, hand and claw, so to speak. So we have this constant condition where the mind just sees in parts what it does, and that's why trying to change one side at a time never works. I want you to see this. We're going to look at something that's very significant. You might write it down. A sleeping mind, your mind, my mind, humanity's mind, unregenerate. A sleeping mind is object dependent. A sleeping mind is object dependent. What does this mean? A sleeping mind is object dependent. We're exploring how it is that we get to a place where we cannot see that the experience we blame for the moment is in fact produced by the mind that it feels the moment has wronged it. The mind is object dependent. What does that mean? I'm going to go very slow. I'm asking you to see this. Our sense of self depends on things outside of us. My sense of self depends upon the people that produce the reactions, good or bad, the estimation, the judgment of them. My sense of self depends upon what I think I possess, because I'm either elated for the wealth or I'm frightened by the possibility of losing it. My sense of self depends on beliefs. It's how I comfort myself when things go bad. And the moment that my belief is challenged, then my sense of self depends on trying to prove that I know it's right and that you're wrong. So that my sense of self requires enemies. It requires friends that are in cahoots that say, yes, by God, you're right. And it requires people that say, no, you're wrong. Because the more they say I'm wrong, the more sure I am that I'm right. That's what my sense of self requires. And we're attached to these people, these possessions, these positions in society, these images and beliefs. We're attached to them because it is through them, what we have imagined they are and mean to us and our contentment and security, that we require them for our sense of security. And the minute any one of these images that are created by a mind asleep to itself, you have never created an image that you become dependent upon. That's impossible. Who would make a prison for themselves? Rather, my mind makes these images in order to have some time and place where it won't be in the pain it's in. And so it separates again the experience of a moment it doesn't want into the projection of a moment where it won't feel that way. And then it experiences what it calls relief, freedom. And when any one of these images is threatened, what happens? The same mind that created the image then feels it must defend it. This is what it means to be object dependent. My thinking, my plans, my problems, whatever all of those and more may amount to, do not exist without a mind that believes what it is thinking about is in fact other than the nature of the mind doing the thinking. So that the mind imagines a time to come where everyone will respect you, a time to come when you won't be afraid, a time to come when you'll finally shake off the shackles of whatever the ambition is that drives you nuts. And as it imagines that time, in the very moment of imagining that time, it enters into the fear that that time will not come, and it experiences the dread of moments that seem to prove the time imagined isn't coming at all. So this lower sense of self, this lower sleeping mind, is forever striving to fix its life, to make it better, because that's all that mind knows how to do. It fixes, it is fixated without knowing it, all the way back to the earliest days of your childhood, on what it means to be a good person, on what this religious icon may or may not mean in your life. It is fixated because the more fixed the thought, the more certain the sense of self, when either that fixation is strengthened by a condition that promises it true, or when something threatens what that fixation is on, and now you must go back and fix everybody else and fix the world around you. So this lower sleeping mind, forever trying to fix its life, cannot see that what it is trying to fix is a life that it's imagined. And you can fix an imagined life all day long, but it doesn't change the fear that comes with being identified with those images. This is the great illusion. I need my clock. This is the great illusion. The sleeping mind compares what is to what it imagines should be. What is that you're looking at me and you're not approving of me. What is that I just got news about my health that I didn't want. What is the fact that this body is getting older. What is the fact that what I hoped I would have, I don't. That's what is. But when it runs into what should be, then instead of understanding you can't change what is, so instead this mind begins to feel this shouldn't be like that, and then does what? It shouldn't be like that. Isn't that resistance? Isn't that a negative reaction? And as that reaction grows, the negativity, so grows with it determining whatever it is that has gone wrong with life. And then does what? Then it searches for a way to make things right. Better to suffer yourself than to ever have to say to another human being that you're sorry for them having to suffer you. Better to suffer the moment of anxiety than to suffer years and years of fears and tears because the anxiety convinced you to go do something, get something, buy something that would get rid of that pain. So this mind looks for a way to make things right when it sees and says, no, that's wrong. And it looks over and over again trying to prove itself real, which it does through the search, but the missing half, what it's looking for that it says will free it, doesn't exist outside of what that sleeping mind has created in its own misunderstanding of itself. This is why self-knowledge is critical. So here is, as we work our way through, a truth. Not an idea, although it has to be expressed that way. Not an insight, though it may be founded in that. And not a lesson in terms of something that you must now identify with and then judge yourself if you fail to do it. The truth that changes everything is in the moment when, just as we saw in the opening of this talk, here's this negative reaction, this dark cloud of fear or confusion. That in that moment, to see for a fact, the only power, that negative reaction, which cannot be separated from what it blames for the experience of it, we're imprisoned in our own mind. And we're imprisoned to the extent that we can't see the depth of that deception. And what is the depth of that deception? It is the instantaneous identification with one side or another, with hating the person that said the thing or hating myself for responding with cruelty. It is the inability to see in that moment that what I fear is taking place doesn't exist without something that's depending on life going unchanged so that its security is never challenged. As long as we see life one side at a time, the thing we're judging or the sense of one who is doing the judging, we will never be free. Because you can't change your life one side at a time. What if you could remember that? I'm sitting in my home, I'm depressed. I'm out with friends at a table having a glass of wine, I'm lonely. This object-dependent mind, what is it focused on? I have abundant food, I have a place to live, I have clothes. But all it sees is what's missing. An object-dependent mind. And as it focuses on what's missing, it experiences the pain of that because that mind has already determined what shouldn't be missing, and now you've got the conflict, and now you're chewing on yourself. Object-dependent mind. It goes into the past over and over again. It is dependent upon the object called that memory, filled as it is with whatever the pain was. And then it focuses on that object, and as it focuses on that object, not only is it experiencing something that doesn't exist outside of the content of the thought being brought up by that mind, but then it resists its own conclusions. It resists the very thing it brings up to think about. And then we chew on the past, or more accurately, the mind that won't let the past be what the past is, gone. It chews on itself, and we suffer. But just above this, this cloud-making machinery, just above it, just as above, so below, just as we saw with the clouds, just above this cloud-making machinery, this fog of thought, is a field of divine light. Just because you can't see the sun above you doesn't mean it's not there. Just because you can't see the whole of the moment doesn't mean the moment isn't whole. Just because you can't see that every moment is holy in its origin doesn't mean that there isn't something wholly responsible for its appearance. This light, like the sun sits in a form of silent awareness of all that it feeds and nourishes. Just as Scripture says, He maketh the sun to shine on good and evil alike. So is this light that is above this cloud-making machinery, so is it above right and wrong, above judging itself, because to judge yourself is to take one side of the event, isn't it? So this silent awareness in which these opposites appear together, this grand silent sun, S-U-N-S-O-N, this grand silent light through which the clouds pass, through which these thoughts and reactions appear, it is always present, and it holds all sides, both sides of the reaction. It looks with equanimity at the hope that passes through in the form of a cloud that says, my contentment lies just ahead in that new job and that new relationship. It allows that without a problem. It's not bewildered by it. It's not overcome by a hope, nor is it overcome when that hope that we were identified with, that cloud, those thoughts, when they're challenged or threatened. And it allows all of it just to come and to go, to rise and to fall. That higher intelligence, that beautiful living light understands that in the human mind, yes and no don't exist apart from one another. That this mind can't say yes without saying, oh no. And it can't say, oh no, without saying yes. Tomorrow it won't be no. Because that mind vacillates from one side to another. You can't serve two masters. You'll love one and despise the other. That's the nature of this sleeping mind. But this light that I'm describing to you, in which all of this is always unfolding, but we never see because we're always identified with the event or the experience, that light does not see the event that it blames or the sense that feels that pain. It doesn't see them as opposites. For us, the opposites make enemies. You're like this, you're not like that. That's how I know you're my enemy. You don't understand me. That makes you my enemy. No, believe it or not, it is my insistence that my understanding is right that makes an enemy out of everybody. Where do you think enemies come from? God did not make enemies. Human imagination creates the evil of enemies, creates war. Because if I can get that side to look like my side says it should look, then everything will be copacetic and peace will reign. There's never been peace on this planet, and by and large, I have to tell you, there probably never will be, save for these intermittent moments where there's a temporary peace because people have agreed this is how we're going to get to it. But because the people who agreed to it can't keep their own life in check, how in the name of God are they going to keep the human consciousness in check? And it always proves to be just exactly what I'm describing to you. Finding something to blame, something to hate, something to be set against, so that I can be the one who knows what is right and what is good, and neither one exists without the other. So this awareness that I'm describing to you in words, you can describe sunlight all day, and there's no light in these words. But it doesn't change the fact that this sun and this light and this celestial love, this being, it doesn't mean they don't exist. Contrary to that, we begin to see that these opposites are complementary expressions of an inclusive, all-pervasive intelligence that contains both. What did Rumi say? Somewhere out there, there is a field beyond right and wrong. Let me take you there. What was he talking about? He was talking about this world that sits above this mind divided into friend and enemy, love and hate, yes and no. He was describing a world where love is greater than any, where the sky, where this light is greater than anything that passes into or through it. In fact, he was describing something that when you enter into it, as I'm trying to do, reveals that these opposites, like the crest of you ever watch a wave? It crests and troughs. It crests and troughs. That's how these opposites appear, as crest and trough, but they're a singularity. And if we can begin to see that, which we're intended to be able to, then we come to an unbelievable, and one day your jaw will drop, God willing, an unbelievable revelation. I don't know whether to get into this now or not. The revelation is that there is no separate experiencer apart from what is being experienced in each moment. That the real experience is revelation itself. The real experience is the moment in which the will of heaven interacts with the will of earth. The real experience is the constant participation in a rebirth, where that painful sense of I that now is there all the time that seems to create an experiencer separate from the moment that's being experienced, all of that evaporates in that light. This sense of self that's separate is created by the movement of thought as it runs round and round itself. By the way, seeking to escape what? What is all of my thought trying to escape? Another thought. Only that thought seems real because this reaction has described this event, and now I know for sure what it means. So that our suffering can't exist in the form that it does now, apart from the illusion that is produced by this mind, as it always takes one side over the other, as it can only see one side at a time. That's what blindness is. Seeing one side at a time. Have you ever thought you saw the truth about someone or something? And then, God willing, that it doesn't take 5 days, 5 years, then in a heartbeat, you see that you completely, listen, you didn't misunderstand the event. Your understanding said it did know what was happening, and you identified with your understanding, and now you realize in that moment, oh my God, I did not understand what I was sure I did. Please let me see more clearly next time. Then you know that moment of seeing that is a moment of humility. In that beautiful moment of proper humiliation, an individual is awakened to realize that what they were so sure they understood, they didn't at all. And then they can begin, if they are truly aspiring to know something of the life of God, of Christ, then they can begin to say, well, wait a minute. What I was sure I saw, what I was sure what happened, didn't exist without the experience I had of it. So then the whole question of me as the one who knows through experience, when the experience, by the fact of it, is setting me apart from the moment, the whole idea of an experiencer begins to disappear. And as it does, what happens? Let's bring up the second key lesson, Kate, please. It's a bit of a summary, and then we'll start wrapping up this material. Read along with me, everybody. It often feels as if the unwanted moments in our life are spinning out of control, but they are not. It's not we who are being turned round and round by unseen forces born of an unseen conflict. Sorry. Please let me start over. It often feels as if the unwanted moments in our life are spinning out of control, but they are not. It's we who are being turned round and round by unseen forces born of an unseen conflict within. This conflict arises whenever the light of life reveals something true about us that we would rather not see. And in that instant, what we have taken to be ourselves, our life as we know it, is exposed for what it is, a dream born of a sleeping mind. And as we see this self that clings to its dreams is no more real than the dream it struggles to protect, in that exact same moment, something in us is quietly set free. In that exact same moment, where we are not taking the side of, this is what I see and happen, that's why it's wrong, this is how it should be. I'm not taking the side of my explanation, and I'm not taking the side of the part of me that is reacting to and having the experience of my own explanation. Oh, if I could just say this so clearly that you can't miss it. This mind explains to itself what has happened, and then it has the experience of not wanting its own explanation. This mind explains to itself the pain that it's in and why it's in that pain and what it must do about that pain. And we cannot see that the mind that is explaining the unwanted moment is actually creating the experience of that unwanted moment in and as it makes the explanation. I've been at this for almost 50 years, and I don't think I've said it more clearly than that. Because were we able to see this, think with me for a moment, how would it be that I was able to see this? Unless there is a light that lives in that darkness that knows it not. Unless there is another order of mind, another order of being, another kind of light that however its advent takes place, however it suddenly shines itself into my life in that moment, for that one bright gleaming moment, it's totally clear that this experience I don't want does not exist apart from the sense of self given it through its description and experience of that moment. One thing, not me as I am, created and intended to experience the indwelling Christ, created to know and have intimate experience of the moment when heaven intersects earth, when the will of the divine runs into the will of this nature. No separate self outside of that. No experiencer then describing what happened, what it means. Because each and every moment, as it is true in creation, transforms, obliterates all that was before. And it is replaced by what is new. And when you understand that it is what was before that is busy explaining to itself what's going to happen as a result of that encounter, then you understand the possibility of a life where you really are not just made in the image of God, but you are practicing being in that image by an understanding that I'm trying to get to, which is that if I'm going to change, I can't be one-sided anymore. I can't just focus on you, and I can't just focus on me. I have to focus on what this nature is that happens when they're brought together. To have that happen, we must be willing to suffer the end of this suffering that is born out of identifying with one side or another. I must be willing to suffer the end of my own suffering. But only that happens when I see beyond the shadow of a doubt this suffering doesn't exist apart from a nature that is taking this side or that side where never the twain meets. Our proclivity of what I call being object dependent is this need that this nature has to identify with one side or the other, because the stronger the sense of identification, the stronger the sense of myself is in place. And that's all it wants. So that we must learn to surrender this familiar, old, painful sense of self to the light that reveals it. Why else would I be given the light to see that far from being the delight I think myself as being, that the minute someone challenges what I call good, then this darkness rushes over me and I blame you for the darkness that is welling up inside of me because you have in your ignorance decided to challenge who and what I think I am. I must surrender this sense of self to the light that reveals it, not just, by the way, for the suffering inherent in our clinging to it, but because when and as I'm able to understand as the story at the start of the talk alluded, that no matter how deep and dark and familiar and demanding this reaction may be, or how clear this demanding reaction is describing the event it says is responsible for that experience, that if I can see them both at the same time, in that moment when they are brought together, something new is given birth. Wherever two or more of you are gathered in my name, there shall I be. This is a description of what happens when the mind, slowly awakening to itself, begins to realize from itself that it is intended, to whatever extent it becomes possible, to do exactly what I'm describing, to become this impersonal witness to this sense of I that rises with every reaction, and then to recognize as that all is arising how this object-dependent mind now fashions its very definitive sense of self on whatever that person is, whatever they did, whatever they didn't do. I know who you are, I know who I am. You know neither. But you can know something altogether different. You can begin to realize, well, how many times have I had this reaction and never even thought to myself that maybe this reaction is built into some demand I have, that this reaction is because I'm comforted by what I call my security. You fill in the blanks and you'll see that this sense of I that rises in a reaction, that what we need to do with that reaction is to withdraw from the nature that gives it life. And in that withdrawal, because of the withdrawal, to see that nature begin to dissolve in the light that is revealing it. And as we come to see that this real change begins when we understand what we really need in these moments isn't to make that situation, that condition, what we really need isn't to make unwanted moments better. What we need to do is to make them brighter. Not make the moment better, make it brighter. Remember what I need to remember in that moment, and bring all that I understand into that light. Because if I'll do that, this new and more inclusive awareness that reveals our suffering is the light that redeems it. This new and more inclusive awareness that reveals our suffering, born of what? Being one-sided. That new light redeems that suffering, because in that light we see the only reason the suffering is going on is because we have identified with one side or the other, and now we know better than that, and our life gets brighter every day the more we practice making the moment brighter as opposed to trying to make it better in time. You can make it brighter right now. I can sit and be angry as all get out and be thinking it'll be better when you and they this. But if I finally understand I'm one-sided, and that's the suffering, because I can't change the whole of my life one side at a time, then in the clarity of that understanding, I don't need time to make things better. My life can be brighter right now. And the brilliance of this teaching, not my teaching, the brilliance of these insights is that it is in making one's life brighter by recognizing and seeing what we are given to see in that moment, that we are redeemed from the false nature that can't stop chasing itself, but that never finds an end to that race. I think we need to stop here, Terry. I think that's probably enough for now. Wait, you know what? No, that's all. We're good.
All right, Guy, we'll take a break here.
You're not Terry.
Nope, I'm not Terry, Guy.
Yeah,
I'll do my best here to fill in for her.
yeah.
But
Thanks, John.
everyone, we'll take a short break here just to give you a chance to stretch your legs. While you do so, I have a couple of announcements I can share before we begin our discussion. First announcement is, again, a reminder that we never get tired of sharing, and that is that we always are open and need your help in promoting the mission of this foundation and spreading these ideas around the world to all of those interested in hearing them and putting them to use. And so if you'd like to join us in that endeavor, please do consider going to our website at guyfinley.org/donate, and there you'll find plenty of opportunities where you can help us both financially and in other ways which don't cost you a penny. So guyfinley.org/donate. And thank you so much for those of you who are already donating and helping us in so many ways. The second announcement is just a reminder to all of us about our weekly class schedule. This Sunday morning class begins our week of study with Guy, but we have plenty of other opportunities through the week. On Monday evenings at 6 p.m., we have an online study group that meets, that is led by students, and it is open to our Wisdom School members. And I'll have a little bit to say about that in just a minute, but you can join us for that if you're a member of our Wisdom School. On Wednesdays at 6 p.m., we have classic talks from Guy. We began this series this year, and it's really been an enriching thing to listen to again. We have been choosing classic talks from Guy that Guy has given in the past and been listening to them again, and it is such a blessing to have that opportunity to do that, because it is true. We hear them with different ears, we learn different things, and if nothing else, we are reminded of some truths that we so easily forget. So join us on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. for classic Guy Finley talks. And then Friday, we have another student-led online study group, and this one is open to anyone who wishes to join us. And that group on Fridays listens and talks, or we will be discussing the talk that Guy gives on the previous Sunday. So today's talk will be what we will be talking about on Friday. And then the weekends on Saturday, Guy has been speaking live on Insight Timer at 8 a.m. on Saturday. So join us for any and all of those opportunities. The last thing I'll say is I mentioned the Online Wisdom School, and I think I just wanted to pass on a very enthusiastic invitation that if you are a student who wants to deepen your understanding of this material, I'd encourage you to consider joining our Online Wisdom School. It is a subscription program for just a very, very low price in which you can join us. And that Wisdom School, then, by being a member of it, you gain all sorts of different benefits. Access to a huge library of materials on our website, as well, including some e-courses that you could take and work your way through. There are the study groups, the Monday study group that you could join us for. There are a Facebook group page that you could join and exchange ideas with other fellow students. And there is even a daily meditation email that you would receive as part of that program. So I'd encourage you to consider that. If you're interested, go to guyfinley.org/wisdom, and that will tell you about the opportunities and what the subscription costs are for that. So with that said, I think we're ready to begin our discussion, and this is an opportunity for those of you online. You can, as I see someone has just done, if you're on GoToWebinar, you can click the hand icon and speak directly to Guy, or you can send in written questions, and those will get relayed to me as well when they come in. So, Guy, anything you'd like to say before we begin the discussion?
Nope.
Okay. Then let's start. I see we have one hand in the queue from Elisa. So we'll start with her. Hello, Elisa, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Hello, Guy.
Hello.
Very nice opportunity to talk to you directly again. So this was exactly my topic the day before yesterday. I mean, not wanting to see something or not accepting something. But for me, the question is, where is the difference between my mind doesn't want something and me not compromising myself? And this sentence that inspires me: if I do what I want to do, what has hurt me doing so? So maybe it depends on the situation, but really for me, sometimes I don't see how can I, either the situation is something I should surrender to, or if this is something about compromising myself.
Yes. I understand your question well, Elisa. And it is at a certain point in the development of an aspirant that they first even begin to suspect that what they have always called doing what is practical has not been practical at all. And yet, and this is the caveat, Elisa. Let's just say I have a business. We don't have to make it complicated. I have the business of my relationship with my wife. I have the business of my relationship with the people that I work for. I have the business of a business that has people working for it. I have the business of my health. I have the business of my finances. So that we all have business with life. The question that one has to eventually ask and then be wise enough not to answer is, where does this business that I have with life demand or otherwise compel me to act against myself? Because we do have the capacity, Elisa, to know when we are acting against ourselves. Now, the razor's edge here is that sometimes I have to do things that I don't want to do, but that I need to do because it's part of my business with life at that moment. Example: a young man, a young woman, their business with life in this world, as twisted and broken as it is to ensure that they have enough money to provide food, clothing, and shelter for themselves. And if they have a family, to be responsible that that family and their business with their family is as best it can be handled, so that there are provisions for those moments where a rainy day comes. But now, I hope you're following me, now I'm not 30, 40, 50. Now I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm still trying to make life feel so that I am secure. So what was the business required 5 years ago is no longer the business required today. And the way that I can know that the business is no longer required today is the extent over which I'm suffering over something that, no matter if I change it, changes nothing. Let me try to be clearer. We live from a mind that says we shouldn't have to do what we don't want to do. We live from a mind that says we shouldn't have to be in relationships with people that we don't want to be in relationship with. Both of those ideas are right and wrong at the same time, Alicia. I shouldn't have to be around people I don't want to be around, but if I work for somebody who troubles me, then I have to understand the compromise here isn't for me to just get rid of this person or change the circumstance. I'm going to have to learn how to use that moment and that relationship so that instead of being destroyed by it, I can discover something about myself through it. Then it becomes a profitable relationship. So can I find, Alicia, in these moments where it is that something is saying you've got to compromise yourself because this situation demands it, and then be present enough to see what is it in me that is telling me I must make this compromise? For whom am I making this compromise? And most of the time you'll see that what's telling you to make that compromise isn't for the sake of the good of yourself or anyone else. It's for the good of a nature that says if you don't, something bad's going to happen. That's why it's a razor's edge, because you can't decide in advance. You can't know ahead of the moment where all of this revelation is taking place. You just have to be in that moment and present in this light that is revealing that something is taking this side because it's avoiding that side, or something doesn't want that side, so it pursues that side. And we make this nature makes endless compromises that do nothing but ensure the continuity of that sleeping self. I hope some of that made sense to you, and you can use some of those ideas the next moment, the next time you're facing a situation you've described. On we go, John.
All right, Guy, on we'll go. We'll go to our first written question. This one came in this week through our website, Guy, and it comes from an individual who identified themselves as simply NB. And they asked, "Dear Sir, how to deal with a constantly berating, verbally abusive spouse who keeps reminding me of my past mistakes? Regards, from NB."
NB, I don't know if you're online. I hope you are. Why is there a question about what to do with someone who constantly berates me and is abusive, who does nothing but remind me of the past mistakes I've made? Why is that a question? And the answer is because in one way or another, and this may apply to what I just answered Elisa with, one way or the other, I'm actually dependent upon this person for what they say and do, because it keeps me, as I imagine myself, someone who keeps wondering, why am I in this situation? I'm not changing the situation, because to change the situation would be, believe it or not, to live without someone I resent. It's classic codependency, sir. You couldn't pay me to spend 5 minutes with a person who was verbally abusive. But if, in fact, I was married to that person and we had children, then I would have an opportunity to say to that person, listen, you must stop this verbal abuse. Because if you don't stop this verbal abuse, you are ensuring that our relationship will disintegrate. And there'll be nothing that we can do, because I'm not going to spend my time with someone, around someone who is constantly looking to punish me. That would be one possibility. Here's another possibility, NB. What if your wife is in so much pain that she doesn't know what else to do with her pain other than pounce you? What if her pain produces and expresses this unseen weakness where I'm so dependent on being in this place, having these possessions, and by God, NB, you've let me down because we have none of these things I imagined we would. So what if out of that pain, NB, you actually understand why your wife says and does what she does? And that you, NB, could start to use some of those moments to discover the part of you that wants to, how shall I say it? The part of you that just wants what you don't want to go on. Because at least you know who you are. And the last thing I would say, if you've asked your wife time and time again to stop being the way that she is, whose responsibility is that you remain in that relationship? I can't tell you what to do. I'll tell you what I'd do if I was in that relationship. I'd leave her suitcases on the bed. And I would close the door behind her. Maybe there'd be pain and regret. Maybe I've been with that person 10, 20, 30 years. Things change. I change. She changes. But to live in a sense of captivity, no one's fault but your own. All of these answers apply, NB. I can't tell you which one is for you. Maybe all of them. Last thing I say is this. We are so quick to complain and so slow to change. Stop trying to make your life better by getting your wife to be different, and make these moments where she isn't different into something brighter for yourself, so that in your new understanding, you at least make the possibility of a new relationship with her possible, that she might see what she's like. Then there's a chance. On to you, John.
All right, Guy. I'll tell everyone online that our queue is wide open right now. If you'd like to talk to Guy, go ahead and raise your hand. Here is a written question that I just got, Guy. It comes from Annette. And Annette says, sometimes our impression and perception is absolutely on the mark. It is what it is. We shouldn't doubt ourselves. We revisit the situation and again see clearly that our first impression was right. You just know what you're dealing with. Can you please comment on this?
I would love to. What we're talking about here, Annette and everyone who is still online with us, is a completely different order of being. If a man were to find himself suddenly stranded because of a shipwreck on some kind of deserted island, he would and should be able to perceive 100% from the impressions that he is going to have to do certain things in order for him to survive. He doesn't need to rethink it, Annette. The actions required are inherent in the awareness of his situation. What he knows needs to be done is not something that he has to take thought about, save for, if required, him remembering his survival practices. I'm speaking about a way in which a person interacts with others and never has to revisit that interaction, never thinks about it again. I'm talking about a way to be in relationship with the moments in our lives where, because we see with great clarity both sides of the moment at once, the decision is made by that awareness and the action that follows it is infallible. And whatever the action that follows that moment, whatever it may be, it will reveal the next action to take, so that no thought is necessary at all. Christ spoke of this all the time. True teachers, whoever they may be, understand. We are object dependent. I think something, I say something, and then I think about it again to make sure that what I said was the right thought. And with every revisitation of a moment past, I am made the victim of a nature, a sleeping self that wants to be sure that what it said and did was the right thing. And it consoles itself by going into this conflict with itself. That's how it consoles itself. Last thing I'll say, Annette, if I have to revisit a moment to find out whether I was right or wrong in it, I'm living from a nature that will never know the difference between right and wrong, but that will invent it time and time again so that it can keep me busy living its life. That's all, John.
We have two hands now in the queue, guys, so I'll go next to Isabella. Good morning, Isabella.
Good morning, John, and hi, Guy.
Hello, Isabella.
It's really good to see you. So you may have just kind of answered what came up for me, because like with Annette, I'm going through a lot of stuff coming up, nostalgia and whatnot, and I know it's stuff from the past. So I know it's revealing things, but I wanted to ask you how do you deal with the regrets that come up, like, oh, I should have, what if I had stayed with this person? What if that? So, I know I made the decision at the time that I needed to make, but how do you deal with the regret?
Whose regret are they, Isabella? Whose regret are they?
Maybe that's what I'm trying to figure out,
Well, this is what you need to see. Whose regret is it?
Yeah.
It is who and what I am in this moment that is intended to be ceaselessly brought into the revelation of a new possibility. Is who that is? Is that what goes back and thinks about the past? Or is something in me object dependent so that it can't wait to go back and revisit this? It does it without me thinking about it. I'm just taken there. And if I'm just taken there to the past where I find a regret waiting for me, I have to assume that what took me there so that I can deal with what it says is that regret, so that it can relive itself at the expense of my rebirth. This is where...
And I'm different now, so I don't want those times, but the mind says, well, if you knew then, or if only...
Well, who are you talking?
Yeah.
Who are you talking to then, Isabella?
Right. Yeah.
You see, this is what the whole of this talk was about. I am suffering every time I revisit a regret. No questions about it. But the mind that takes me back to the regret I'm suffering tells me, here's how you end the suffering of this regret. Suffer it again, because this time maybe you'll figure out who and what you could have been so that you'll be different next time. And it's all a lie.
Uh-huh.
God,
it's stirring up like mud
exactly.
in the water.
The divine does not ask you to suffer for your past. It asks you to suffer dying to the past so that you can be present to the light that reveals the need to do so.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. That's it.
All right?
Yes.
Go to work. Let me know.
Yes. Thank you. That was it. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Love you.
We'll go next to Robert in the queue, guys. So, Robert, good morning. You're unmuted, Robert.
Good morning, good afternoon, Guy.
Hi, Robert.
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the talk. Some great points there, very practical stuff. And in particular, I mean, everybody's talking about like NB. I've gone through the same thing, NB. And it's a point of conscious shock, right? And how you have an opportunity, a turning point to apply work. And so part of that is understanding that that's what you're about to engage in, as opposed to running from it, going into it.
Yes.
And and you can't solve it from the one side, as you very well pointed out, by concentrating on who did what and who am I and yada yada. It really comes down to that misunderstanding that got you there in the first place, but also the fact that you have to see what's going on with you at that moment.
Yes.
And it's that turning point. I'm going to throw this out there in an Enneagram type of thing, that point of conscious shock, change, opportunity.
Yeah. Look, to your point.
Enjoyed it.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it, Robert. I appreciate the comments always. But to your point, and what was it? To the stars and beyond. the reason that real teachings aren't popular is because inherent in a real teaching isn't just the idea of how do I change, but what is it that has to change? And much as Christ said, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those that mourn, the first triad of the Beatitudes, what he was alluding to is that no human being is going to change spiritually without suffering spiritually. We suffer now ourselves uselessly. But when we begin to suffer the self that believes useless suffering is profitable, then in that moment we understand change requires sacrifice. The sacrifice that change asks is for us to see that the nature that keeps trying to change itself and the event or itself is powerless to do so because it doesn't live in the world where it doesn't live in the light from which it's possible to make these changes. Change requires sacrifice. Sacrifice causes suffering. Let our suffering, the sacrifice of seeing the truth of ourselves and letting that light do what it is intended to do, let it be for something that is truly worthwhile, instead of something that keeps the idea of our worth as individuals in place. That's the whole Megillah. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die. On we go, John.
Guy Gloria has raised her hand in our queue, so we'll go next to her.
Very well.
Good morning, Gloria.
Good morning, Guy. What a beautiful talk. Gosh, I just keep on thinking the same thing. It's the suffering that shows you the light, and from that suffering becomes magic. It's so magical. It's so beautiful because God allows you to see what you need to be seen in this moment in time and flows that energy and light into you. And it's just so, to me, it's just so magical. I go, the suffering is the best part of everything in life because when you surrender to the divine, you see so many beautiful things.
Yeah, okay, and I love the emotion and the sentiment, but when we are suffering, the last thing that our mind that is suffering over what it is thinks to itself, this is so beautiful. So there's one eye that can see the beauty of this, and it's good to feel that. But let us not forget that when the moment comes, when I am asked by that light to see what it is that is seeing my life for me and seeing something to suffer over, in that moment, that self is not going to say, oh, you caught me. Thank God you did. I'll just lay myself down. No, we must agree to pick up the cross, if you will, that place in time and space, and bear what we must bear, sitting and standing in that light, so that all that can be done will be done within us, and then we get to do it again. When you really understand that transformation is inseparable from the revelation of the nature that needs to be transformed, then you have a certain joy that has no fear in it, because you understand there is nothing to fear as long as the Spirit of God is living within you and you're agreeing to live from it. Then you've got it. You understand, and then your work is a different work, same in one respect, but now it becomes something that you would not give up for all the money in the world, all the power in the world, all the possessions, all the approval, all the things that you want. You wouldn't give up any of what you now know to be true for any of that. You are where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing, and becoming what God has intended you to become, which is the ground of his revelation in this world. Stay with it, Gloria. I'm glad for you.
All right, Guy, I'll come on again. I don't have any other hands in the queue, but I do have this one comment that Kate sent me that came in from Shoshana that I think would be a nice way to end our morning here. And this is what she said. She says, hi, Guy. I struggle to remember to see with eyes that see with timeless equanimity. Today's talk brought up a comparison of blindness the power of feeling negatively that leaves me feeling like a myopic cyclops storming through experiences I don't like. I'm grateful to be growing more and more aware. Unlike the poet Sylvia Plath, who was so tortured by her own thoughts that during bouts of madness, she said a large bell jar would descend around her skull and consciousness until her sense of herself and peace was lost.
Indeed. That's all.
All right, that's all I have here, Guy. So any final words from you?
Remember your work. Remember your work. Contemplate what it means to be object dependent. Lend your energy to the wish to make the moment brighter, not better by some plan that involves one side or another. Change the moment, change myself. Neither will change until you see self and moment as a singularity. The more clearly you see that, the more quiet the mind becomes. The more quiet the mind becomes, the more the light that is already there makes itself evident. And it is the advent of that light that does the work that we're asking be done within us by the divine upon whom we wait. I'll see everybody next Saturday or Sunday. Bye.
Thank you, Guy, and thank you everyone for joining us. So please do join us for our upcoming classes this week. And as Guy said, he'll be speaking live again on Saturday on Insight Timer at 8 a.m. and then next Sunday as well. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.